Section 5.6 is about half angles. And so we've done the double angle, and now we're going to do the half angle, and you'll see the need for that. So here are the list of the formulas. Again, those are on a reference sheet, so you'll want to have that handy as you work through your homework. There's one for sine of theta over 2, cosine theta over 2, and then there's 3 possibilities for tan theta over 2. So let's see how that might work. So it says find the exact value of cosine 15 degrees. And so we don't know what the cosine of 15 degrees is without the calculator, but we can use the half-angled identity. If you double this number, you get something that we know, like 60 or 45 or a reference tied to those, then you can use this formula. So we're going to do cosine of 30 over 2. That's equal to plus or minus square root of 1 plus cosine 30 over 2. Well, we need to remember cosine 30 is square root of 3 over 2. At that point, the rest of this is algebraic. So the first thing is to turn this top part into one fraction. So we make 1 be 2 over 2. Now we have the same denominator. So we have 2 plus square root of 3 over 2 over 2. And when you have it over 2, it's like multiplying by 1/2, right? So if we want to do that, when you have this fraction over 2, it's like multiplying by 1/2 there. And so then we have 2 plus the square root of 3 over 4. Well, the 4 is a perfect square, so it can come out, and we have 2. So your final answer would be square root of 2 plus the square root of 3, all of that under the radical, over 2. So you're going to have answers that look like that in your homework. All right, use the half angle to find tan of 195. Well, if we double 195, 2 times that gives us 390. If you went around, that's 360. There's 30 more. So 30 is going to be our reference angle, and we do know 30. So tan of theta over 2, there's a formula. Sine of 390 over 1 plus cosine of 390. But remember, we're thinking through 30 as our reference. We just have to remember what quadrant we're in. We do end up being in the first, so everything is positive. So sine of 30 is 1/2. Cosine of 30 is square root of 3 over 2. I did that algebra, turning that into one fraction. So I have 1/2 over 2 plus the square root of 3 over 2. 1/2 times, flip this, the 2's go away, and we have 1 over 2 plus the square root of 3. We have to rationalize that on the bottom. Remember that we multiply by the conjugate, and the conjugate is the same as this, but with a different sign. So on top, when we multiply, we get 2 minus square root of 3. On the bottom, we have 2 times 2 is 4. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is just 3. There's a minus in between. That's 1. So this is our final answer. So there is a good bit of algebra in cleaning these up, but the formula is pretty straightforward. Let's go look at our homework. So this says determine whether the positive or negative square root should be selected. Because remember, whenever we take the square root, it's either or. Well, cosine of 194.0. 194 is in quadrant 3, so cosine is negative. So you would choose this one down here. Tan of 60. 60 is a quadrant 1 angle, so everything's positive. So you would choose this one. See, we're looking for that little sign there. Find the exact value of sine pi over 8 using the half angle identity. So if you double pi over 8, you double that, you get pi over 4. That's an angle that we know the trig functions for. So we're going to use pi over 4. So we put in 1 minus cosine pi over 4 over 2 and then we plug in what is the cosine of pi over 4. That's square root of 2 over 2. We make that one fraction. 1 becomes 2 over 2. We have that. And then when you have divided by 2 and then a divided by 2, you're actually dividing by 4. So square root of 2 minus the square root. It's all under the radical. Let me say it again. Square root of 2 minus the square root of 2 all over 2. So lots of radicals, lots of 2's on that one. Half angle to find the exact value of tan 75. If you double 75, you get 150. And 150, the reference is 30. Okay? If you forget what your things are and you don't have your sheet with you, and I put this up here to show you that, you can always draw that 30, 60, 90 triangle, which we'll just do that. And the 1 is opposite the 30, the 2 is the hypotenuse, and square root of 3 over here. So sine of 30 is 1/2, and cosine of 30 is square root of 3 over 2. So that can help you in plugging in. So tan is sine of that, so we said that's 1/2, over 1 plus cosine of that is square root of 3 over 2. Now, if it's 150 that we're using, we put in the negative, because 150, it is negative there. So we have 1/2 over, I've already made that a one fraction, so 2 minus the square root of 3 over 2. We flip it and multiply. The 2's cancel out. We have 1 over 2 minus the square root of 3. We rationalize that by multiplying by the conjugate, and we get 2 plus the square root of 3 over 4 minus 3. So our final answer is here. Find the exact value of cosine 5 pi over 12. Well, if we double that, we get 10 pi over 12. That reduces to 5 pi over 6, which is equivalent to 150 degrees. So again, we've got a reference of 30. Okay, so 1 plus, and we are doing cosine. So when we go back to our, there's our formula. We only have one. Tan, we could choose different ones, but this one is there. So we have 1 plus the cosine of 5 pi over 6 over 2, and we plug in the square root of 3 over 2, and we have all this. Looks funny. This should go all the way. All right, so we have 2 minus the square root of 3 over 4, because this was actually 2 minus square root of 3 over 2. That's what that is. And then over another 2. So that's where we got this 4. So that's just something on the side. All right. And then we take out the square root of 4. That's a regular 2. And we have square root of 2 minus square root of 3 all over 2. Same thing with number 6. We got 7 pi over 8. And if we double that, we have 14 pi over 8, which is the same. Let's reduce that. So that's 7 pi over 4. And that is the same as 315 degrees. If you forget that, or you didn't have your reference, you can divide 4 into 180. That gives you 45, and 45 times 7 gives you the 315. From that point on, we are doing exactly what we've been doing. We use our tan formula, 1 minus the cosine of 315 over sine of 315. And the reference for 315 is 45. So we're plugging in square root of 2 over 2 everywhere that we do that. And we go through the algebra and get down to square root of 2 minus 1. Number 7, think we actually have done one with 75 degrees because you double it and you get 150, and the reference for that is 30, and you're doing the same thing. So all of these are the same thing. All the work is shown here. Number 8, use a half angle identity to find the exact value of cosine 105. When you double 105, you get 210, and the reference for 210 is 30. So you want to keep that in mind, and also remember that 105, the original angle, the one you're trying to find, is in the second quadrant, and so cosine is negative there. So ultimately, we do have this negative out here. So the algebra is the same each time. I think you should be able to do these half angle problems.